I had a conversation with my two uncles, two brothers, Woodrow and Arthur Cleveland Means. Uncle Woodrow resided in Birmingham and Uncle Cleve resided in Utah. They in fact were my maternal grandmother's half first cousins through their mothers. But they always acknowledged me as their little nephew, so they were my uncles. They were comical, enlightening men. I always called them my historical uncles because they provided me with a wealth of knowledge on my journey. As you can see in their portraits, my uncles were biracial with strong European features. Uncle Woodrow was the first man of color that I had ever seen with blue eyes. He used to catch me staring at him many, many times. And because I was just so fascinated with his eye color and just studying him in a sense of trying to understand how did he get those blue eyes? And he would just look at me and say, "What you looking at, boy?" But I was just amazed by his features and trying to understand how did he come out the way that he did. So one particular summer, I interviewed the two brothers together, and we talked about how an individual's complexion connected them to family. They emphasized how color identification was strong back then. And Uncle Woodrow went on to tell me the story that when they were children growing up in the 20s, that they thought that Mama Ella was their grandmother. And I asked him, I said, "Well, why did you think that?" And Uncle Woodrow said, and I quote, "Because she was the only woman in that community that we can remember that looked like us. She was light-skinned. She was white-like. She had these small, thin lips and this small nose and this long, brownish, reddish hair that fell down to her mid-back. She said she was gorgeous. She was a beautiful black woman. But they were children." And he said, "Your grandma and the rest of them, they called her grandma. So we thought she was our grandma too." But to children, they did not really understand the relationship because him and my grandmother, they shared the same grandfather, but they had different grandmothers. My great-great-grandfather had several clandestine relationships with women, as my grandmother nicely put it, that her granddaddy liked young, dark-skinned women with big asses. So, and as a result, their mother, Nettie Mae, was a product of that relationship with Miss Annie Spencer. So, they kept calling her Grandma Ella, Grandma, and apparently Mama Ella did not correct them because they wouldn't have done it. But anyway, Miss Annie Spencer, their grandmother, caught wind that they were calling another woman Grandma. And she didn't chastise them because they were children, but she basically made it very clear, crystal clear, that she was the grandma and that she better not ever hear them call anybody else grandma but her. But then he went on to reiterate his story about how they identified with her because she looked like them. So they thought she was the grandma. And as we were talking, Uncle Cleve blurted out and said, "Well, her daddy was white. That's why she looked like us." Then it got quiet. And then I looked at him and I said, "Well, Uncle Cleve," I said, "I was always told that Mama Ella was a Cherokee Indian." He said, "Listen, son, listen. And I'm telling you now, her daddy was white. Our daddy was white. So we know." And then Uncle Woodrow said, "Yeah, we know what we're talking about. Her daddy was white." Well, all right then.